Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the summer term SunoikisisDC Digital Classics session. This is the first and introductory session of the term, which is this month, this summer month. It is devoted to digital scholarly editions in classic, Byzantine, and medieval studies. As always, if you're watching live on the 21st of April 2026, feel free to write in the YouTube chat and tell us where you're watching from, and also if you have questions for our speaker, we will address them at the end of the lesson. This is our first session, and as you can see from the program that you can find at the link that we will post in the chat in a second. The program will go until June 30th. I'm sorry, and it's quite diverse. We have many papers on many lessons on classics, some on Byzantine studies, and also some on medieval studies, and also a whole lot of different approaches, going from linked open data to artificial intelligence to more didactic and pedagogical approaches to digital objects in teaching. But long story short, since we have a lot to cover in this session, let's introduce briefly our first speaker for this term, who is our colleague and very good friend, Franz Fischer, from the University of Venice in Italy. And he's going to introduce us, let's say, introduce us and introduce you students to the world, let's say, of digital scholarly editions. And yeah, without further ado, I would say, Franz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Martina and Monica, for this invitation. And I'm very pleased to be actually in person in Cologne today, next door to Martina's office. Before I start, I try to share my slides, and I should be able to just to the presentation. So now I can't see anyone else but the slides. Can you see the slides as well? Can you give me...
No, you just unshared them, so you should go on present again.
Okay, wait. Bildschirm teilen. Gesamter Bildschirm. Teilen. Okay. That should...
As you can see, this is really live because we are having live problems.
Okay. Please interrupt me, yes, or give me a note or a shout if something is not working. So I'm not seeing the participants or questions in the chat if you have any, only if I start to unshare again. Okay, so thank you very much. I just go ahead. So this is meant to be a very gentle introduction, but heavy slide based introduction, but I will skip most of the slides. So they are downloadable from the GitHub with further references to useful literature and some examples of scholarly editions. But I kept the contents of this large collection of slides together. So in case you want to dive deeper into some of the topics I will try to cover, but I will skip many of them, otherwise we can't make it until the end. And I try to finish before, so that we have a little bit of time for discussion. I also included a small exercise, but that's maybe something more like a homework, but yeah, do as you please. So I move on. So here is the link just to be safe with further information to this introduction. So I will talk about principles and practices and future prospects of digital scholarly editing in general. And yeah, this is how it starts. So the core activity, as I see it, of textual scholarship is the creation of scholarly editions to provide critical representations of historical texts and documents, manuscripts, drafts, notes, prints, inscription, and so on. And this practice of scholarly editing is defined by the textual material itself and its transmission, the human and financial resources, the technology, tools, and standards available, and the textual perspective or the way of textual criticism that is applied to the material. And as you know, there are many different perspectives and traditions and schools of scholarship dealing with text and historical documents. So the core question of this whole series is what is a digital scholarly edition? And we could start, or you could start from practices, so looking at what is actually labeled as a digital scholarly edition, and we are happy enough to have 2 online catalogs here in the links. They are also among the resources in the on the website. One produced by Patrick Sahle on the left, and one produced by Greta Franzini, and now hosted by the Austrian Academy of the Sciences. So very useful tools to find scholarly editions. So we have a quick look at the catalog curated by Patrick Sahle, where you can search according to the materials or what's to be edited, addenda, the subject, and other categories. And there you should be able to find editions that might be of interest for you to see what the state of the art, how are research questions addressed through collections and editions. And slightly different in the design is the catalog originally by Greta Franzini, which can be searched according to several categories. So this is also part of the exercise, so that you browse a little bit the catalog and get familiar with digital scholarly editions in order to get an idea what we are actually talking about. Digital textual scholars have always been theorizing what they are doing. So one of the fathers or initiators of this field is Peter Robinson, the editor of the Canterbury Tales edition. And he, in 2002, stated in a short article that's also very readable, and he established 6 rules or definitions to describe what a digital scholarly edition actually is. So, and he says, a digital scholarly edition is anchored in historical analysis of the material. So far, so good. So that's what we know also from traditional editions in print. It presents a hypothesis about the creation and change. So it supplies a record and classification of difference over time in many dimensions and in appropriate detail. And now the 4th point is has been from the beginning controversial. So even you would not expect that this is the case. So Peter Robinson said it may present an edited text among all the other texts it offers. So in traditional scholarship, you would be the main aim is always to present an edited critical text. But Peter Robinson says, okay, it might be useful among all the texts it offers, but it's not the main aim necessarily of a digital scholarly edition. And the other 2 points are also worthwhile to be reflected. So it should allow space and tools for readers to develop their own hypotheses and ways of reading, so to enable the reader to deal with the textual material. And it must offer all this in a manner which enriches reading. So scholarship and theories about digital scholarly editions moved on, and this is a masterwork of what has been labeled by Francesco Stella, a medieval Latin scholar, professor from Siena. He labeled it the Gospel of Digital Scholarly Editions, so of my friend and colleague Patrick Sahle, 3 heavy volumes in German with thousands of footnotes, but very readable, but maybe a bit heavy to digest for a beginner. Then a very readable book by Elena Pierazzo, also one of the pioneers in digital scholarly editing, in English, so maybe a little bit easier to read. Here again, Elena Pierazzo and Tiziana Mancinelli, a 100 pages introduction in Italian. So also if you want to have it a little bit smaller and if you are able to read Italian. But and here is just an example of many handbooks that are out there by now in English, Italian, German. And as we can see here in this Italian handbook by Fabio Ciotti, topics related to digital scholarly editions are very visible and very central for these. So digital scholarly editing played always an important role in digital humanities at large. But I would recommend for this introduction a short article, again, by Patrick Sahle. So that's here in section 1, theories. What is a scholarly edition, by Patrick Sahle? So it's open access. It's also linked from the seminar website. And in this short article, Patrick established 3 rules, so I call them the golden rules, which he used to as a criteria to what to include in his catalog and what to exclude. So not everything that is digital out there is necessarily to be considered a digital edition. And that's also the first rule. So a digitized edition is not a digital edition. So in a seminar, I would now discuss, if this was more interactive, with the participants what this might mean. So I don't make it too, I don't want to create any tension here. So just because a critical edition, as we know it from print, is available in digital format, so say as a PDF, which is definitely digital, it's not considered to be a digital edition according to Patrick Sahle. So we expect something more from a digital edition in the strict sense. The second rule is also a negative definition. So a digital edition cannot be given in print without a significant loss of content and functionality. So if you come across a digital edition on the web and you feel like actually this information and also the functionalities that come along with this text or this edition could be also given in print without a significant loss, then probably we are not inclined to label this a digital scholarly edition in a strict sense. So we expect something more that is not possible to be reproduced or covered in between the covers of a book. So, and here's the only positive definition. A digital edition is guided by a digital paradigm in its theory, method, and practice. So what does this mean? The digital paradigm can be described from different layers perspective through practices, practitioners, and the products and shared methods. And the easiest is to compare it maybe then with what is there before, so the print paradigm, so to say. So the digital paradigm entails many aspects in scholarship, not only for digital scholarly edition, but in the field of scholarly editing, we can definitely say that access makes a huge difference in the digital, according to the digital paradigm. So access on print editions is in specialized library, university libraries, and access is limited to the opening hours and so on. So that's nothing new for you. So that's natural for every scholar and student today. In the digital world, on the internet, as long as you have internet access, you can access any contents as long as there is no paywall or something else space. So there is in practice no limitation of space. Modality, we can include images, audio, video, whatever might be additional or useful material to complement the textual information. Functionality, so how you browse and search a text and analyze textual data, is very different from the options you have in a book. Fluidity, so the text might change according to the features you want to visualize or highlight. Markup is such an important aspect of digital textual scholarship, so that's why it's included here. Then we have more focus on the processing of textual data than the product. So in digital scholarship, you produce data and share it as early as possible. And important is that you process the data that you collect. Collaboration is a key factor in digital humanities scholarship. Openness, interaction, participation, and the last term, which is maybe not known to everyone, transmedialization. So transmedialization is a key concept which I want to explain very quickly right now. So in traditional textual scholarship, what do you do? So editors go to the archives, or they order images of archival material, manuscripts, documents, papyri, whatever, and it's protected in libraries across the continent or across the globe. And then they produce a representation in book format with all the information you need. So transcripts, maybe an edited text, introductions, appendices, indices, and everything you need to enable the reader to engage then with the text and its tradition history. And the reader is very grateful that he or she doesn't have to do the work itself and can immediately work with the textual material. In the digital world, we have a separation of content and form. What does it mean? So we start with the documents, and then there is an intermediate layer which does not exist in scholarship in the print era. So representations, digital representations are created. So images, markup, encoded text on a representational data level. And only from there, you produce with tools or technologies available a presentation, a visualization of the data that you have created. So that might be a tech cloud or a fully fledged edition where you have the facsimiles, an edited text, a commentary, but you can also produce statistics from this, or actually you can also print out some of the contents, or maybe also a great extent of the content. But the core is the data level, where all your knowledge is represented in form of data and data models. And the reader or the user interacts with this data via an interface, or maybe he's also able to engage directly on the data level and work on their own, avoiding an interface or an intermediate layer. You can store the data also, or share the data in a cloud system on GitHub, which is a common practice right now. And maybe you don't even need to present the data. So hardcore digital editors just don't care about a presentation because this will not last. So editions break, so the editions on the web, whereas your data should be preserved forever, ideally. So just very quickly, so this transmedialization, which is in fact the separation of content and form, has content on the representation level, so data, metadata, images, text, markups, annotations, and gathered together in data models, which is distinct from the form, so the presentation, the publication, and the visualization, which might be a website, a print, or something different. And these presentational formats are only realizations of perspectives. So you can always change your perspective and visualize data and contents in different ways, different contexts. So information, documents, and text are maintained and represented without determining a publication format. So that's core for digital scholarship in general and for digital scholarly editions in particular. Just to localize a little bit where we are with editions. So we can see here a range of digital textual resources, so from catalog data, which is more descriptive, then these descriptive catalog data might grow into fully fledged archives where you have then image data, and maybe then you add some transcription and critical annotation, and this might grow more and more into an edition. And from these editions, you can then extract text layers which you might want to collect into corpora. The same we can do from the perspective of textual representation. Within digital scholarly edition, we have a range of layers, textual layers, which range from the physical object, so what we see, or even the material, if you come from epigraphy or sigillography, towards more abstractive semantic layers. So from the visual to the specific document, from a version you might derive from a group or a branch of a textual tradition, then a specific linguistic code, so maybe a canonical version or a reconstructed text version of a certain work, the work itself, which might be also available in translations, and with additional material to understand the context of the work, and then more into more abstract layers as regards the meaning and the semantics of a specific work. And that's basically what Patrick Zahler did, and according to his so-called text wheel, we can even go full circle. So from the visual part here as text as sign, we can also point to the text as idea or meaning, the semantics of a text. So just this is a very useful way of locating your textual perspective. Every text always covers any aspect that is here. So every text can be described in terms of a linguistic code, so a sequence of words, of characters, in terms of version, in terms of document, sign, or work, or meaning. So I don't get into this. For a project which I will introduce very briefly in a couple of minutes, I tried to match components of the edition of St. Patrick. I will show you later two slides about this, to match components of this digital edition to some textual aspects which they represent more than others. So as I said, every text represents all the, you can't imagine a text which is not at the same time a linguistic code and has a visual dimension. But in the composition of a digital scholarly edition, which provides a lot of contents ideally, some contents are more useful or significant for specific textual aspects. Okay, we should go into practices and look for some examples. I've chosen this beautiful project because I'm here in Cologne right now, and this is a beautiful project which shows that digital scholarly editions might start just from the technological options or possibilities that we have. So this is an edition that should be published since many years. It is now online, but only a few contents available. But yeah, so it's following a very traditional publication policy, which is not exactly what we would expect for a digital publication. Anyway, so the thing here, these are curse tablets, lead tablets, a very small format, with curses from the Levante, so the East Mediterranean, and they are almost illegible. So they've been thrown into ponds or wells and cursing unfaithful lovers, or at the races, the horses, and then magical materials, hair and flowers and herbs are included to influence maybe the outcome of a race, or to do whatever is in your mind. And yeah, so this project has been enabled through the technology of reflectance transformation imaging, which uses the different angles of the flash and makes visible very fine and thin surfaces of texts. In this case, these lead tablets with the incised curses. And yeah, so we created a project around this, and that's might be something that wouldn't, so this is definitely something you wouldn't be able to realize in traditional print publication. So here are also translation included, but I will skip this. So that's the setup of the digitization via reflectance transformation imaging, RTI. We also use it here with Martina Filosa and SEALS, actually. Okay, this is a superstar among the palimpsests, and is the only testimony of mathematical treatise of Archimedes. And this was not readable because the text has been erased and then used for a liturgical text. And then a lot of imaging technology has been, so a full range of multispectral, X-ray, and so on has been used to make visible the actual text that was before the liturgical Greek text on this parchment. And yeah, here's also a link and a TED presentation. So if you want to see what is actually possible to make text visible, that's very instructive. That's the team leader, William Noel, from this editorial project. This is just an example how you can unify the very important manuscript of the New Testament, the Codex Sinaiticus, which has been distributed across various libraries, and make this accessible through different structures, so the material structure and then the canonical structure of biblical text, and have then the full testimony unified again. This is just included, so that was my PhD here at University of Cologne, treatise on medieval literature, liturgy, and this includes, the link is among the resources examples of editions. So a critical text, transcription of an important manuscript, a different version, facsimiles, manuscripts, descriptions, and various indices to make this text for the first time accessible for scholarship. This is just a side note because liturgists didn't notice that this text was published already for 10 years. And so the communication between traditional domains, so liturgy, sciences on the one hand, and digital humanities have been not very well connected. So this is still a requirement to improve. So to train traditional domain experts and scholars to find the material that is actually relevant for them. This is St. Patrick's Confessio, so the oldest texts that have been written on the island of Ireland in the 5th century, and this had a different starting point. So there was already in existence canonical critical edition of the text, and the challenge of this editorial project was then to transfer the whole critical scholarly framework into a digital environment and make this useful in on the web. And that includes then again the facsimilia, which is a standard requirement for digital editions nowadays. The full apparatus criticus with all the references to the testimonies, apparatus fontium to the sources of the text, and apparatus biblicus, so the biblical references and the commentary, and a lot of additional material which enriches the resource. But this edition has still the feeling and the spirit of an edition of from more than 10 years ago. And in the meantime, transcripts of the 8 manuscript witnesses have been published by a colleague and friend again, who was also an intern at the time at the Confessio project. But these resources do not talk to each other, so they are not connected. So in that time, digital editions were still conceived as alone standing resources which were not able to be integrated with other resources. So that has completely changed, and we will get back to this towards the last part of this presentation. I want to briefly introduce you to yet another project that I'm currently doing with colleagues from Graz, Wuppertal, and Venice and Tübingen. Peter of Poitiers, so a very famous and important theologian from the early days of the Parisian University. This is a visual representation of the biblical history as told in the book of the Bible. And in fact, this is the first timeline, so a representation of historical time as a line. So something that is the most natural thing for us nowadays, to represent time as a line, a directed graph. And that has been realized the first time here by Peter of Poitiers in his compendium. And it was a bestseller, so to say, very popular, but has never been edited, because how can you edit something, a text that is structured in a visual way? So I skip the prologue and just show you some of the textual features, and then I will show you how we were able, or think we would be good to deal with these textual aspects. So these are just exemplary and should be applicable also to similar textual features in other textual traditions. So this is the oldest copy from the end of the 12th century, already created in Austria, so Molsee monastery. So the periphery, if you consider that the transmission started in Paris. It's the oldest copy, so still Peter of Poitiers is still living. So it's a very clean copy, not very much used, a lot of free spaces. And in the middle, we have the spine. So that's the line of succession from Adam and Eve. So it's the male patriarchalistic succession of the predecessors of Christ. And this runs through the pages 8 folia, 12 pages more or less, depending on the version. And the historical persons are represented as these icons or medallions or notes. So we see Adam and Eve here starting, and then their children. So we know Cain and Abel, but actually there had to have been also sisters or daughters. Otherwise, the history of the human kind would have been finished by then. So, and then we have the actual text is only accompanying the graphical visualization of historical time of the biblical history here. So very early from the start, we also have copies that are realized in rolls or scrolls. So on the left, a very beautiful illuminated scroll from France, but now in Houghton Library, Harvard University. A copy here from St. Gallen. These are copies we found. So we found a lot of copies that were unknown so far in libraries, Italian libraries, as these two long scrolls. Then we have on the right a German translation, which goes actually from left to right. Then very early further diagrams have been edited to illustrate or explain historical contents of the biblical books. On the left, we have encampments of the tribes of Israel around the tabernaculum. On the right, a plan of Jerusalem. We have connections between the lines which represent relationships, but also time overlapping of the kings of Judah and of Israel, for example. And this is how it ends in the oldest copy with Christ and his resurrection. So a very complex transmission history. So we have an early version, we have then a longer version. At the very early stage, we have then extended versions, and we have translation into various languages. And we will launch this edition next month, actually, but you can always have a sneak preview among the resources. There's a link, and I think also the slides are linked to the edition. So how to digitally represent the compendium, so to navigate through the material, facsimiles, transcripts. So we have more than 360 witnesses, which are all texts in their own right. So we don't want to just create an original version, but the richness, represent the richness of the full tradition. And we want to enable the user to analyze, compare history and content of these witnesses. So the typographical relations, the graph structures, the textual components, diagrammatic components, iconographic components, and make the user engage with and understand the text in a holistic approach. So that means we need to somehow visualize the biblical and historical persons represented as nodes, and all the other aspects that are listed here. So if you're interested, please go back to the slides. That means we have to model the content and the features of this text in what we can call here maybe an ontology, which is then the base to model the data model. So I won't get into this, but this is something you will always encounter if you start a digital humanities project or an edition. So we were also able to map all the contents that we identify that are characteristics for this text in a data format that you probably are familiar already, so TI, but in following seminars, you will be introduced also to many aspects. TI is a de facto standard for encoding text as a basis for digital scholarly editions. But key here for this project was to establish a structure which we call superstructure. So in order to enable an identification of all the contents across all the manuscript witnesses. So everything that we might find or encounter in the witnesses need to be identified in order to make it accessible and comparable and critically analyzable. So this superstructure includes, for example, nodes. So SSID for the node Eva on the left. Then the same for Adam, but then we have textual components, the text Adam, so on the right. This is all then organized, so from the beginning in a spreadsheet, but then we soon moved on to a proper database that enables then a matching of the visual, so the visual representation, the facsimiles, with these structural elements. So we developed a tool to identify components on the left and to establish a connection to the superstructure in order to match then all these elements across the whole of the tradition. That's how it works. And I skip this, and this is then also reflected in the text encoding, which I skip as well. That just as a background, if you are interested, have a look at this now is already available but not officially launched edition of Peter Potier's Compendium Historia, which includes a critical text, a visual edition that you can navigate, so on a visual representation of the graph, where you can access textual components, iconographic components, and much more. A manuscript database with extensive descriptions and additional contextual material. So to sum up, achievements of digital editions, we have now as a standard in digital editions facsimiles. So they are usually the starting point and at the center of every digital scholar edition. So the material and visual aspects of manuscripts, inscriptions, papyri, seals, documents, whatever you have. We are able to represent multiple textual layers, so diplomatic transcripts from documents or single witnessed texts, genetic editions which are not so important for or relevant in medieval or classical texts, normalized, corrected, critical text versions. We can all bring this together and organize as a complex architecture of textual layers. We can provide multiple witnesses and versions, so and represent the heterogeneity and the richness of textual tradition. We are able to annotate and analyze paleographic features, linguistic features, metrics, the stylistic, semantics, and whatever is relevant for a research community and their respective sources. and the achievement of functionality and access is evident. So hyperlinks, we can include tools into the edition so that you can engage with the images, you can engage with the textual layers. We can work with various ways of visualizing the data. We can enable the user to interact with your data and the edition, and enable participation even in the process of establishing textual layers or data and comments, depending on the policy of the editors. And something very specific and important is that we can organize digital editions as distributed architectures. So I will come back shortly to the concept of linked open data. IIIF data is referring to image data that can be shared in a standardized way, and the FAIR principles. So I will come back to this in a minute. I skipped the slides in order that we have saved some time for discussion. And these are, if you're interested, especially in textual criticism, these are aspects that are specific or especially worthwhile in a digital environment. I skip also here a different way also of describing what critical texts actually are. So there are different definitions or interpretations what a critical text should entail, or what the nature of a critical text is. In the digital cat, we can address any concept of what a critical text is supposed to be. And this is maybe what you should keep and memorize as a definition for digital scholarly editions, as proposed by Patrick Sahle, also in the article which I included in the reading list. So a digital scholarly edition is, as to sum up what we have now seen, a critical representation of a historical, literary, or documentary text established and provided under the conditions of a digital ecosystem of scholarly knowledge resources. So if this was a more interactive seminar, we would go through each and every word here now and would try to come to a shared understanding of these aspects. But this is maybe also something nice to meditate before you fall asleep tonight or any other occasion. Now, I want to widen a little bit the perspective to what's coming next, or where we are already now. So the future is already here. So future prospects. Linked open data, the reconceptualization of the edition as a network of distributed digital scholarly resources. I will talk about this now in a minute. Then we obviously have a huge impact, technical innovation, so machine learning, artificial intelligence, and large language models in very many forms and modes have a huge impact and are extremely productive and powerful for establishing scholarly editions. And we'll look at some examples. And what is not so relevant here for us as a seminar for classicists and medievalists and Byzantinists, born digital literature, so I will exclude it, but this is something you should also keep in mind. But the definition of literature and textual resources or material as textual heritage open also the horizon of how we engage with textual material and how we justify what we are doing as textual scholars. So I will very briefly come to this. Now, I'm looking at my clock, so I think in 20 minutes I will run through the rest of, I don't know how many slides. So, FAIR data. So this is something I hope you are familiar with already, so at least you have heard about it. So this will be something you will hear again and again. And I think already in the next seminar, I've looked at the program by Chiara Montignani and Roberto Rosselli del Turco. They will address the topic or the fair data. So fair data principles is a requirement if you look, for example, for funding from European funding institutions, or the European Commission, but also national funding agencies. So every digital scholarly project need to reflect, address, or realize the fair principles. So F is for findable. So your data need to be findable, and you have to make sure it can be found. It need to be accessible. So that's the A in fair. It need to be interoperable. So that's where we come to standards like IIIF or TI. And it need to be reusable. I don't get into the details because this will be the topic of your second class, but it's the justification for or makes a requirement to reflect on data standards, which are crucial. Otherwise, it's not to be considered as scholarly. This is what I hope Chiara will present in the next seminar, and Roberto just published a white book and guidelines for the realization of digital resources, and very specifically also digital scholarly editions. Very recommendable. There's a PDF version downloadable and a PDF and a web version. Very brief suggestions how to organize your digital edition project, or if you're already at the end or participating in a project, to double check if you reflect the fair data principle recommendations. So this is based also on previous recommendations and the most recent guidelines on the market, so to say. So here's just how it starts in this guidelines publication. Then technical innovation, machine learning, a real game changer in textual scholarship and in digital scholarly editing project, is what was unthinkable maybe 15 years ago, to automatically transcribe handwritten manuscripts. So handwritten text recognition, as most famously possible with a tool called Transcribus, or a more open source tool, eScriptorium, is now possible, and a game changer if you are dealing with a large amount of textual material, so from archives, and you have a lot of image data. And instead of doing so in a traditional way, collations here and there, you are able to deal with a lot of textual data from image data using these handwritten text recognition tools. There are more, so OCR for all and other very potent and efficient tools which change the workflow of digital scholarly edition nowadays. So depending on the amount of material, if you're dealing with one papyrus fragment, then probably that's not so recommendable to start with a handwritten text recognition tool. But if you're dealing with large traditions from medieval or Byzantine texts, then it's definitely something you need to consider nowadays. With a small group of friends and colleagues, we tried to envision what the other application scenarios and uses in the future for the establishment of digital scholarly editions using, so with the advent of ChatGPT and other applications based on large language models. So everyone is very familiar and knows quite well how efficient and impressive the results, depending on how you use it, these tools and applications are. And it would be irresponsible not to consider it also in the framework of an editorial project. So we invited experiments at the very beginning in 2000, not at the very beginning, but so in the early days, 2024, and that's what we collected also in an article, and we call it when it was 2024, because the change and the advancements in these technologies is so fast so that we can't keep the pace. But it's very interesting to see what editors now are trying to make use, in which ways they are trying to make use in the context of a digital edition project. And yeah, I just briefly summarize. So there are three complementary aspects. So integration of AI into the editorial workflow. I will show you an example. Then prompt engineering as one. It's becoming a core requirement of digital scholarship, also for students. So how can you enhance or optimize the prompts using an AI application, and the inclusion of external knowledge bases. So I won't get into this. If you're interested in this, there's a lot of information out there, and you can start from the article that's also included in the bibliography. So this is an ideal edition pipeline. So in the middle, you start from the source material, then you work through digital images, raw transcriptions, structured text, annotated text, towards a critical text, and then the edition as data, as you remember the transmedialization concept. And then you transform and process this editorial data into something that is then more like a published edition. And at all these stages, you have structural tasks on the left side, where you can use AI for the planning of the edition, like students do when they plan their homeworks, for example, but for many other texts that are related to this edition pipeline, and then very concrete tasks that are listed on the right side. And AI and AI applications can be very useful here to facilitate this process. I think I skipped this. Prompt engineering is maybe a topic in its own right, but not to be ignored if you go more and more into digital humanities scholarship. And this is just an example of Christopher Pollin, so one of the colleagues which was involved in this experimental workshop and the article, and it was very much engaged also in the current discussions. So you can also, what I used to teach my students in a full semester, so how do you do text encoding of historical texts and documents and works. You can use ChatGPT and make ChatGPT do the job. Of course, the results are always very problematic, but you can really enhance the prompting, and there are several ways to produce more and more reliable results that might be the basis then for an individual review and revision of the encoded textual data. So I skipped this, but this is definitely something that we should say that's a devil's work, but it has, of course, several problems and implications of the work. And one hot take, so warning of our colleague here from Cologne, Niels Reiter from the DH Institute in Cologne. We always have to be aware when we try to evaluate the results and the use of large language models and their applications. What we are doing is actually not including we are including non-local and IPA-based models. So we are doing product testing. So that's very unscholarly and very unscientific. So there's a huge danger to be dependent on products that are not open and produced by scholars themselves. I skip this, so that's an Italian initiative dealing with born digital archives of authors, of modern authors. So I skip this, but this is a wide field, and new methods needs to be developed, and that's why this initiative has been created with Italian colleagues. This is an upcoming conference, so if you're really interested in what's coming next, again, the group that was already involved in the article and the experimental workshop, and colleagues from a German-speaking network to the IDE, Institute for Dokumentologie and Editorik, will have a conference in Wuppertal in September, and the idea, also the call, was to imagine what will be the situation in the post-digital age. So what is the post-digital age? We understand a condition in which digital tools and models of thinking are no longer conceived primarily in opposition to analog. So that's maybe where we are until now. So we still, or traditional scholars still, think about scholarly editing as something that has a tradition and is something that we understand comparing to the print culture. But in the future, in 20 years, and maybe beyond that, this will be just the most natural thing. So digital is not something distinctive or new anymore, but it's the foundation of humanities scholarship, and consequently has the basis of further reaching questions. So if you're interested in this, we will soon publish the program, so watch this spot, and I think it's very exciting to think about where we are going. The aspect of textual heritage I mentioned, I skipped this in order to leave a little bit more time to the discussion. I include, but it's not open access, so it's maybe it's very unfortunately. So chapter 9, I discussing strategies of decolonization of textual heritage, which I think is something nice, but it's unfortunately not in open access. So you will have difficulties to read this article probably. But I want to, because I'm the director of a center at Foscari University in Venice that is not only a digital humanities center, but a digital and public humanities center. And the question of public textual scholarship, does this exist also in the context of, or in the field of digital scholarly editing? And definitely yes. So we have a very famous digital edition of notebooks of Bentham, Jerry Bentham. So it's not ancient or medieval text, but anyway, so they managed to include a large community of lay people, of enthusiasts, to transcribe the books, the notebooks, diaries of Bentham. So so that needs a lot of planning and management. You need also a moderator to enable participants of a wider public, and that can be very useful for the scholars and very exciting for people to participate in a scientific project. So this has been called a crowdsourcing project. Today we talk more about citizen scienceship. So crowd is maybe a little bit more looking down upon people, which is not the intention. So, but to include citizens as in scientific projects. There are tools and softwares. I don't know if these will be presented here in the seminar series, but from the page is one very user-friendly tool to enable user or the participation of public. This is Zooniverse, also a very successful project that provides software to enable public editorial projects. This is a very fascinating initiative in the field of papyrology. So even with the incentive to win prizes to decipher and encode the carbonized, the burnt papyri of Herculaneum. So that's probably something you will learn as a classicist in other contexts, and I skip this as well. This is using wiki software, so as you know from Wikipedia, and this can of course also be used in an editorial project, so with whatever the material. Just an example. You will find this example in the reading and the list of resources. I skip this because public scholarship can also mean to include, for example, here a novel that tries to contextualize the text that is the actual edition, so to enrich the material, to provide more ways of bringing the more learned understanding to a wider public that is not limited to specialists. So that's a very nice feature of the edition I was involved in. And this is an example I love very much when it's 10 years ago. And we invited the inventor from the page, Ben Brumfield, to present his approach to enable communities and laypersons to actually realize editorial projects. And this was connected to martial arts enthusiasts who wanted to learn from the old masters from the 16th century. So the descriptions, how you actually use your sword to fight. And this is a beautiful example. So I find, so here is an article in a publication which is also on the list. So that shows two things. So digital scholarship can be about enabling communities who have a natural interest in applying textual criticism, because they want to know what are they actually saying, what's the correct, the right text. Because if you have a wrong or a variant or a mistake in the transmission, that can be a question of life and death. So if you hold a sword in the wrong position, that might cost you your head. So that's a beautiful example of textual criticism that can be even physical. So they test the moves that are described in these old texts, and they see if this can be actually the case or if this is a scribal error. And the other thing is to enable these communities, because they have a natural interest in establishing critical and corrected text versions. So just very quick sum up, 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we have more time, 15 minutes to raise some questions. So there are a lot of different types of scholarly editions. I skip this, and some of them are more for early modern and contemporary texts. So you have to make very many very conscious decisions what model to follow. And that again depends. So if you remember my opening words, so how is the scholarly editing defined? So your decisions, what you can do and what you want to do, is depending from, again, the textual material and how it's come upon us, the human financial resources, technology, tools and standards that are out there. The textual perspective, the way you look at texts and you apply textual criticism, including physical textual criticism if you are a martial arts friend. Research questions, best practices in the humanities and the disciplines, and social relevance. How to evaluate scholarly editions? Just to mention, there are criteria established by my colleagues from the Institute for Documentary and Editoric, which are the base also for a journal that we launched and established many years ago, where all the aspects of digital scholarly editions should be covered if you revise and evaluate the quality of a digital scholarly editions. This is the most recent issue, and this is actually referring to tools that you might use for the realization of a digital editorial project. So just so that you know, these things exist. Here is a manifest, so that's also more a grassroots thing. So the spirit of the early days of digital humanities, to have something in hand of the so-called techies or IT people in scholarly editorial projects. So to make sure the digital experts, so the DH scholars, are able to communicate more on the same level with the domain experts, which might in many projects can be a problem, because for traditional scholars in the past it is often just then a technical realization of what they imagine, but a digital and ambitious digital editorial project needs a lot of competences and skills, and reflect a state of the art that cannot be covered by the people who are more from the domain. So this is why this manifest has been published, and it also has been translated in many languages and also published here in the Italian journal for digital humanities. And just one thing, and then I think I'm at the end. Point 3 here is, so you can read it in the German. There's also a draft English translation. Sulla scia di un cambio di paradigma. So in the course of the fundamental paradigm shift from print to digital, digital editions are nowadays the norm of all the disciplines. So that's very controversial, and traditional scholars would still say, but it's not the norm. So if you look at, but I think so, it's more a programmatic statement. So I'm a digital scholar, and I can't appreciate editions which are strictly or primarily print editions. So I think if you want to adhere to the highest academic standards, it's immediately digital. Okay, these are the takeaways. Last slides, we made it. So just to address various aspects of digital scholarly editing. So on the material or immaterial level, we are dealing with written heritage, which comes also with a mission, so to make texts and textual heritage accessible to the people, to communities, to the society. We have, on the practical level, we have lots of best practices which are documented and findable. So we have catalogs, we have guidelines, we have criteria, we have reviews, we have journals, and this is core to reflect the practice of scholarly editing. We have the technological level, and we are dealing with tools for analyzing, enhancing, normalizing, annotating textual data or image data. We have infrastructures, so we didn't talk about infrastructures, but that's maybe something that's coming again in later seminars, but that's of course core. We have technological innovations like the generative AI hype at the moment, with all the potential and difficulties and risks. We have standards on the interchange level, so we are dealing with TI data models, linked open data, IIIF, FAIR data. PUR is for standards for making sure that your publication, your data, your content is also available and accessible to everyone. And on the theoretical level, on the reflection of our doing, we see paradigmatic and hermeneutical shifts. And yeah, that's it. And I actually made it. 16 minutes discussion, comments, questions. I interrupt sharing. You tell me, Martina, what am I doing?
Thank you so much. This was, as always, enlightening. And I'm sure, I mean, I, for once, have a whole lot of questions and remarks, but I don't want to monopolize my role as a chairperson. So I would leave the floor to our students or other people listening live to this talk. So if you would like to ask something to Franz, please write it in the YouTube chat. And yeah, in the meantime, we can keep chatting a bit. So while we wait for the students, and of course, I particularly encourage the students of Cologne to be active. But yeah, in the meantime, I just wanted to say that I loved what you quoted from the manifesto, and that's how it should be. I mean, literally no comment about that, because it's it's how it should be. But I also have a how can I say a bit of a of a pragmatic question. So and it is, I mean, I am also, I do Byzantine studies, as you know, but with a very strong, let's say, penchant for digital humanities and digital scholarship. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I mean, in the community of classics, of Byzantine studies, of medieval studies, whenever you do a digital edition, particularly as an early career researcher, it doesn't have the same weight in terms of publication as it would do a big, big heavy book with very nice paper. And I'm saying this in a very provocative way, because I myself, I do not believe this, but you both, as a very established scholars and professors, how do you deal with it? How do you, I mean, in terms of committees, and when someone is up for a promotion at their job?
Yeah, so that's a very important question. So the career question, and it is a fact. So we, the three of us here, which I see, we all have a strong connection also to the Italian academic environment, where this is a huge problem for academic careers. The irony is, I made it to Italy because I just did what I thought was the most reasonable thing to do, and people appreciate it. And I was so lucky to follow my path here in Cologne and to arrive at a level so that I was recruitable for the Italian academic system. So that's the irony of the thing. So that's why I ended up, so one of the reasons why I ended up in Italy so far. And if I look at my career, of course, everything went fine. So I didn't even plan it. So it was just a natural thing. So one thing followed the other. But that's, of course, not the rule. I think it will change, but I don't know. It has to change, but we don't know in 5 years, next year, in 10 years. So because structures, academic structures are, of course, conservative. Also for good reasons, but in such dynamic field like digital humanities, it's a disaster for some of the academic communities because they lose the innovative potential, they lose the best brains, people who are really open. So interdisciplinarity, also in Italy and other more conservative academic environments, are always appreciated, but they are a problem if you really then follow the traditional career paths. So I think what's nice about digital humanities is that you are very international. So it's a very international community. And if you are flexible and the times are not as bad as they sometimes tend to be, you can find jobs in other countries and then maybe come back to wherever you, or come to the place where you actually want to work. So, but that depends. I know as a professor, I know a lot of funding schemes and revisions and criteria for funding excellent research. And as a matter of fact, if you don't reflect digital practices, state of the art, or do you want to explicitly go beyond digital best practices, you don't get the money, so you don't get the funding. So, I mean, it's just doing excellent research nowadays means to take the best benefit of digital technologies and methodologies that have evolved over many years, decades now, and are very mature. There's a lot of more challenges and potential that we can where we can benefit from, and science at large. So of course, this is something that is unavoidable in a sense, but yeah. So I can't say you are safe if you keep the traditional way and just do your print publication, and so it might work. So if you want to get the traditional job at a university and you have a good supervisor or someone who protects you and brings you into a position, and this person said, if you do it like this, you will get the job, you can do it. So that's fair enough. But I think for excellent scholarship, and if you are really enthusiastic about your material and how you engage with the material, it's nothing I would recommend. But of course, there's a risk. But I mean, academic careers are hard to plan anyway. So, and some are lucky, like myself, and all the colleagues I know. So it's, of course, you have a very small perception because all the others then at some stage say, no, that's not where, I don't want it. So this is not for me, and they are not nice to me. So people have been always nice to me. That's really good luck. And yeah, so no recommendation here.
No, but I fully agree with what you just said. And also, I mean, as you know, we in Cologne, at the Department of Byzantine Studies, we work a lot with seals. And seals are now, as I was telling to Franz just before we started, they are very hip now. So we used to be a very small community. Now we are quite a big community, and this has a bit the advantage and the disadvantage that now we have a whole lot of material cropping up in auctions online, which means that we have a whole lot of new material. Let's say since, I mean, in the last 40, 50 years, I would say that material is 5 times as much. And this means that we need to make this material available because an article that was published 2 weeks ago, now it's already obsolete. So that's where my thought was coming from. Not so much, let's say, longer text manuscript with a very long and established tradition, but rather also, let's say, these Überreste, as we say in German. So this not something that has been transmitted, but something that, let's say, chance finds that keep, let's say, keep coming up on a daily basis, and that needs to be somehow registered, documented, and of course published. And we have it easier, of course, because as you were saying before, of course TI is the de facto standard. So I mean, we know how to do that, we have the venue where to do that, but of course this takes time. And it would be amazing to do some more of, let's say, citizen science, and to engage a broader community, to have to engage with this actually very interesting material. I mean, that's everything pre-modern is interesting if we really want to put it that way. So so yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, Monica. I'm sorry. So you want to say something?
You are muted, Monica.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
No, again, muted. No, I can't hear.
That's very odd. We can't hear you, but you're not muted.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And it was a problem with my phone. But sorry. And I want to comment on one thing connected to this, because Franz, you mentioned, speaking of scholarly editions, digital scholarly editions, distributed resources. We know that digital scholarly editions are a collaborative effort for various reasons, because we need people with different expertise. We have a huge amount of data. But I think that this aspect, in the end, is not new, in the sense that living in the printed age, well, we were used to scholarly work as an effort of individuals in many cases. But and today, of course, with digital technologies, we know that we need the people with expertise. We have a huge amount of data. So we say that these editions needed to be collaborative. But in the end, if we go back, and you showed images of manuscripts, well, this model was present before, for example, the printed age. I define sometimes a manuscript as a collaborative, a page, a folio of a manuscript as a collaborative interface, an interface in the sense that we may have text, a layout, images, a beautiful interface, but there are many cases where these manuscripts are the result of a collaborative effort, when we have different hands writing on the same folio, different parts of the text. So sometimes the printed age is brought us to think of a specific model, and we know that, especially in the humanities, scholarship was and still is the result of an individual effort, and we lost this idea of the collaboration. Of course, today we have the technologies, we have other challenges, but in the end, we are recovering, I think, a model present in the past, where the text was more fluid, let's say. Of course, technologies were completely different. So also in this sense, today, we need new, let's say, paradigms for assessing data, for evaluating this data, especially for students, for academic careers. But we also need to rethink these models and to rediscover, I think, possibilities that were present in the past. So this is just a comment on this.
I couldn't agree more. So that's absolutely true, and it has just been excellent scholarship at any age or century was a collaborative work, but that has been covered a little bit or in the print era. So, and it's just the question now how to do it in the digital. And the digital is, as I really are convinced, has such a potential to make the best or much collaborative processes as compared to the past, where it always was more difficult or slower to collaboratively work towards incremental implementation of knowledge and understanding. So that's with technologies like communication tools, but also tools for sharing data. And there is I saw also a seminar by Daniele Fusi and Paolo Monella on linked open data. So where in the digital, we have to just agree how can we do it in the best way to make sure that we keep scholarly standards and really enable people, peer scholars, but also laypersons and enthusiasts to engage in this knowledge producing process, which is something that is really meaningful to scholars, of course, but also to society, as Martina said. So engaging, so I mean, you can say it's arbitrary, but choosing seals because they are material, they have a history, they have a visual, they have iconography, they have text, and they are just opener to the so a large ecosystem of knowledge resources. I mean, we can always start from Wikipedia, which is a fantastic achievement, as just one way of getting to things that are interesting and meaningful, beautiful for us and to others. And the better we can share this and make sure this is stable and connected with the ecosystem of knowledge resources, then the better. So
thank you so much.
You.
We have a comment from the audience. I will try to show it now on the screen. I hope I will manage. Yes. So a comment and a question.
I was struck by Niels Reiter as aperçu on the risk review. Aha, yeah, correct. Quite interesting. I have read one or two articles by him and thus have a certain idea of what he might mean. Very good.
And he asks whether you could elaborate a bit on this topic.
So the obvious thing is to be aware that if we use applications for large language models, that we are using products of companies which are not very trustworthy and which are biased and which are not transparent. So knowing it is already the first step. That then we can make decisions. Do we have alternatives? Can we work towards the creation of alternatives? So of course, then you see alternatives may not be as efficient or powerful as the more proprietary tools. So, but this is something that needs to be discussed, and scholars need to be very aware, and it's our responsibility to also communicate this to everyone who's using it, as a teacher, university teacher, school teacher. So just banning these tools is maybe not recommendable because that will not change the situation. But to enable and to teach ourselves, peer scholars, students, to critically use these tools and to know exactly what does it mean to create maybe also a transcript or a translation from a transcript from a visual representation of a text, what might be the pitfalls and shortcomings, and where do we have to be very careful, and where can we make very good use, and what needs to be done to work towards something which abides by an academic standard. So this is a corrected, reviewed text version. So we need maybe not more disclaimers that makes explicit what status, what quality is has this textual layer, which we don't publish at the very end, 10 years when in the project, but as early as possible. So handwritten, an automated recognition of a handwritten text, but then a disclaimer, okay, this has this quality status, and maybe that's sufficient for certain tasks, but not for all tasks. So, and we have to be just be more able and aware about the resources we create with the tools that are available. So consciousness and awareness is the key. And then we might come to an agreement and conventions, and we might push developers or communities to produce more reliable tools, that because the requirements of science are different from the requirements of selling a product. But I mean, this has always been the case. To sell a good book has always been compromising sometimes scholarly standards. So that's just in the nature of things. But yeah, we as scholars, academics, we have a very important role here. We can just follow the producers of products and just say, okay, they have their policies and we trust them. So they're definitely not trustworthy. So, but I mean, that's something everyone knows.
Yeah,
so, but it's a really important point, and this will be more and more our daily life. So, using these tools, using results from the application of these tools, and yeah.
Yeah, no, that's paramount. And I mean, I wanted to ask this, so thank you, person who asked this. I think I know who you are. But yeah, yeah, and also like every also scholarly journals now are coming up with more and more complicated AI policies, because I mean we do use these tools on a daily basis, and we just need to, as I said, to be conscious and to be yeah, and and not to ban it. I also agree with you that banning them, it's not, doesn't bring any results. It's literally just, I mean, banning things never actually work. So and it would be counterproductive in this respect, I would argue.
Yeah.
But do we have any other questions? Because we are already, so the conversation was so engaging that we are already 5 minutes beyond our allotted time. But if the audience doesn't have any more questions.
Just maybe, can you say just a few words about the exercise? Because usually
yes.
in Sunoikis is very, very brief. If you want, I see that in the class outline there is an exercise.
Yeah, so I can't see it now right myself, but I know what I wrote. So, I mean, it's just one way to engage with these two catalogs, and maybe you have a special interest or a curiosity about certain materials, topics, or periods, or genres. And then you might explore these catalogs and find one resource that you find especially interesting. Maybe you compare the two entries between the two catalogs, if they are present in both of the catalogs, and then describe briefly how these resources are created, what are the components, and what textual layers and perspectives are realized, because there is a large variety. And you can maybe also think about, that's maybe more advanced, than in what way the digital paradigm has been realized here in this digital edition, and compared to more traditional print editions, if you still are using print publications. So, and then I think more and more that digital scholarly editions are not just scholarly editions in the digital. So we cannot say, do we say digital scholarly editions, scholarly digital editions? Is this something fundamentally different? I more and more come to the conclusion that digital scholarly editions are something different, really different. So in the concept and in their nature than traditional print editions. It's not just an enhancement or an extension or further development into the digital world, but I think they are fundamentally different, and we don't talk about the same thing if we talk about print editions and digital editions. So expectations are different. The same words apply to different things, and that's something we should be aware of. That's nothing to lament or from neither side, but it's something very distinct and from each other. And so to again be aware of these differences is very useful and avoids frustration or misunderstandings, and opens the view for the potential that we have when we work on with text and the creation of representations of these texts that we are interested in.
And if I may add a very small addendum to the exercise, so everyone is more than welcome to do all the exercises, but so my students, the students who are enrolled in my seminar in Cologne, you should do the exercise and send it to me by the end of the Vorlesungszeit, because this is the requirement for the aktive Teilnahme.
I'm sorry.
Important.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course,
if you're in trouble, you can also contact me, so I can.
But yeah, and
if the students get in trouble and don't understand the instructions, they can also contact me. So I didn't have a slide with my contact details, but you can find it. So
thank you, Franz, so much. That's actually very kind of you. And with this, I would say that we can declare today's session closed. And I warmly invite everybody, and including you, Franz, if you would like to, next week, same hour for our second session of the semester. So thank you very much, and bye-bye, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great pleasure.